Welcome to the monthly edition of Krown Countdown U. It's our monthly football wrap-up for all of you with the Cogeco stations and Cable 14 in Ontario. On today's show, we will talk with Justin Dunk as we recap the CFL Combine. We'll stop in with Karl Brennan to talk about his outstanding offensive line prospects on the Laval Rouge et Or, and we'll catch up with the new guy on the block, Stephen Bryce, the head coach of the Regina Rams. So let's first of all start with the CFL Combine. Okay, we will have Combine news coming up, but first, a rarity, a pro day in Canada. Winnipeg, to be exact, as all roads led to the University of Manitoba to see the exploits of defensive lineman David Onyemata. Onyemata went through all of the Combine drills Monday in front of scouts from 17 NFL teams and one CFL team. The native of Lagos, Nigeria, did not play any football until suiting up with the Bisons. Onyemata ranked second on the CFL Scouting Bureau and chose a pro day over the CFL Combine to showcase himself to NFL evaluators. His most impressive assets are his strength and wingspan, and many see him as a natural fit for the pro game. Although only at 6'3", some think his size may work against his long-term prospects south of the line. Many of his results place him in the top 12 or 15 for defensive linemen at the NFL Combine, although his effort on the bench would place him second in both the CFL and NFL Combines. Now to an event many in the business refer to as the Underwear Olympics, the Combine, the CFL version. One of the biggest issues this year were players not making the trip. 3 of the top 4 were not in attendance, and number 3 ranked Josiah St. John from Oklahoma was in Toronto but did not test. The Western Mustangs were there in force, which reinforces what Greg Marshall told us a few weeks ago. It will be a major rebuilding season in London. To the action, bench press. The best of the Combine is right here. It was Philippe Gagnon that blew away the competition. Check out this effort.
2015, let's see what he rips off here today, Don. It looks like warm-up weight. It looks like lightweight. Holy man, is that bar flying.
At 20 now. Still flying. 30.
Wow, he's still got some left in the tank here. He's getting in the 40s.
A lot of players gathered around the walking track here, urging him on. Got another one. Forty reps.
Gagnon did an impressive 40 reps, with the next best being just 27. Between Gagnon and Lazon Seguin, it's no wonder the Rouge et Or boasts the most potent O-line in the entire CIS. How good was Gagnon's effort? Well, if he was at the NFL Combine, he would have topped that bench competition by a wide margin as well. Let's go vert. Levi Noel, formerly from the U of T Varsity Blues, had the highest leap at the Toronto Combine. However, Nick Termanson from UBC recorded the highest one overall, putting up an impressive 39.5 inches at the Edmonton Regional. Termanson has some serious hops. Noel, who spent last season with the CJFL's Windsor AKO Fratman, was the only top 20 prospect in the top 5. Former CIS Rookie of the Year Shaquille Johnson posted the furthest broad jump at the Regional Combine. The results of the broad jump looking a lot like the vertical leap. Johnson taking it, with Noel and Termanson also in the top 5. In the shuttle event, we got more from the UBC DB. He and Montreal Caravan Mako Zapata tying for first. Between the Edmonton Regional and Toronto, Chermanson had a terrific showing, certainly raising his draft stock. His teammate in the UBC secondary, Taylor Loeffler, tying for fifth. Laval's Felix Faubert-Lucier had the best time in the three-cone event, with Concordia's Mikhail Charlin coming in second. Here's the rest of the best times. Top 10 prospect Loeffler placing third. The premier drill of the Combine is always the 40. Brett Blasco from the Calgary Dino showed well in the event, as did Doug Corby of Queens. However, the top time came from Shaquille Johnson, who was a solid second faster than the rest. If the Scouts did not know Johnson, the former McGill Redmond, Western Mustang, and London Beefeater, well, he is certainly a known quantity now. Unreal speed from the Brampton native. Now joined by Justin Dunk, who did an outstanding job with CFL.ca covering the CFL Combine. Justin, thanks for joining us. We can analyze the numbers all we want. We just went through a whole slew of them, but you were there for the one-on-ones. Who stood out for you in terms of the one-on-one drills?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Jim, and I appreciate the kind words. Now, for the one-on-one drills in terms of the offensive and defensive linemen, Rupert Butcher was far and away the best defensive lineman in that group. Quinn Horton from Simon Fraser had a good showing as well. Then on the offensive line, Michael Couture had a sneaky good performance in the one-on-ones as an offensive lineman. And all those Laval guys, they were as advertised. They're rock solid. They're locked up pretty much as all first-round picks.
Now, if we go through the numbers, it would seem to be that this is a class that is strong but slow. What was up with those numbers across the board?
Well, I think you might be right, Jim, in terms of prospects on the defensive side of the ball. Now, there was a bit of an issue with the laser timing at the Combine. I'll give you one example. Shaquille Johnson, the receiver who was at McGill, then Western, then played CGFL with the London Beefeaters, came in and run in the 4.3s on Thursday at the Toronto Regional. Then he comes and runs again on Sunday and runs in the 4.6s. So something was up with the laser times, and Jim Barker, when he was watching some of the 40s, was shocked at what some of the faster guys had run on laser. So I think for this Combine, that a lot of the scouts would have relied on their hand times. But I agree with you. On the defensive side of the football, it's not a very fast group. On offense, there are some speedier guys for sure.
Who went beyond expectations in your mind?
Brian Jones talked about it after the Combine, and Jim, you know this well, that the AUS conference always gets slagged for maybe not being as competitive as the other three conferences in CIS football, and that was sort of part of the chip on his shoulder. And he came in and just blew this thing up the whole weekend. I heard he was a great interview. He obviously had great testing numbers that everyone can see, and in the one-on-ones, he completely ran over a defensive back when he tried to press him. I felt pretty bad for that poor kid. But Brian Jones was one. I think Michael Couture, I mentioned, had a good one-on-one session, but he showed he was a good all-around athlete as well. I think he was an offensive lineman coming into the Combine that wanted to try to get into that top tier of offensive linemen with the three Laval guys and Dylan Guy, and I think he probably put himself there with his showing.
Who really kind of lost a step in this?
Well, there was some defensive linemen that you thought coming in were a little undersized. Denzel Phillip out of Eastern New Mexico was a guy that I talked to scouts about before the Combine, and they thought he should have put on some weight and tried to play on the interior of the defensive line. And he stayed at defensive end, and he honestly just looked a little too small. He's really well built. Like, he is chiseled, but he just doesn't have that strength to line up with tackles or the speed to be an edge rusher. So he needs to put on some weight and go inside, and that would help his draft stock. Another guy that I thought really underwhelmed was Josh Stanford, sort of this enigmatic receiver out of Virginia Tech, and then he was at Kansas and sort of fell out of favor at both of those schools. Still came in with a lot of talent, although a lot of questions. Didn't do much to answer those questions. He actually skipped out on an interview with one of the CFL teams, didn't perform up to par in some of the athletic testing. So those would be a couple guys that I think stocks went down.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Justin, and we look forward to talking to you in the not too distant future.
Thanks, Jim. Always fun being on Krown.
It is easy to make the argument that there has not been a more consistent and dominant unit in the history of Canadian university football than a group who started to move through Quebec City in 2012. 3 first-rounders, including a first overall with Pierre Lavertu 2 years ago, have led the way into the pros. Now the last of that group have made a statement at the Combine and are all ranked in the CFL's Scouting Bureau. It's possible that in a 3-year period, Laval could produce 5 first-round offensive linemen. The man responsible for that unit is offensive line coach Karl Brennan, who we talked to on Skype. Karl, you've got the possibility of having 5 first-rounders. There's some people out there predicting maybe even 6 first-rounders in the space of 3 years. Tell me, when you were recruiting along with Glenn, and you saw these prospects in the field and you struck up conversations with them, did you see an outcome like this many years later?
I think you can't really, have an outcome of thinking that those guys will all be first rounders once the time comes for the CFL draft. But at some point in time, we felt that they were very good football players, given the opportunity for them to, to showcase their talent and perform through the years. The thing with those guys is that they were first-year stars right from the start. So the experience that they achieved through those years, some people played 13 games in their first 2 years. So the experience that they gained in those big games or whatnot is key to what happened to them right now.
Karl, even though most of these guys were first-year starters, what kind of learning curve did they go through, and how different of a player were they coming into your system to now when they're leaving your system?
I think first of all, they were all very quick studies. It's a testament to the coaching that they had at the high school and CEGEP level here in Quebec City, and the coaches, the work that they've done with them. That's a testament to them. I think what gave them the chance to perform at that level and to be quick studies is that they were extremely hard workers, and they were, all of them were, sponges to what I was telling them and what we were telling them. And they, I think from the conditioning program to the workout to the football wise, they came in and they accepted the challenge full go, and then that's why they are the players they are today.
Yeah, but you've got a group there that not only with those frontline players, but if you go back a couple of years, I think you were 3 deep, and you had some guys that were second stringers that were on the bench that could probably start at most CIS programs. How do you manage the expectations of those guys that have to sit behind guys like this, and how do you continue to develop them and keep their focus?
You know what, Jim? We've never really had like 15 offensive line. We were always around the 11, 12, 13 kind of guys. We were never like some universities or some places down in the States where they have 20 O-line. We basically work around 12 to 13. Obviously, yeah, some of them could have worked, but I felt that the guys that stayed here wanted to be here and wanted to live the Laval experience and were willing to sit on the bench. Our 2 centers were the last 2 years. Cal Mongeouet, he played for us 5 years. He was a starter just as his 5th year. Vince Levitt this year, same type of deal. He came into his 5th year. He came back. He was our starter. So they truly believe they liked the way we handled them and everything, and I think that's just part of it.
Vaillancourt, Gagnon, Lauzon-Séguin, they have probably all moved up in one way or another thanks to their effort at the Combine. You can do a whole lot as an offensive line coach with these guys between the lines and in practice, but how much of a percentage does the Combine count? You've obviously coached on the pro side too in the CFL, and how much do you work with these guys in terms of getting them ready for a Combine?
You know what? We have guys that we have our strength and conditioning guys here who do a great job of preparing them for the physical aspect. What I help with them is more of the. I always have. I've been doing this since Pierre Lavertu. I work at the interview process with them. I run through an interview like the interviews they could have with the CFL teams, just to get them accustomed to maybe the language, hearing the questions, responding to the questions as well as they can, maybe changing a couple of words here and there so they understand things a little better. I'm more of the, maybe the mental aspect of the interview, and then, at that point, the guys I think are ready to take the challenge and go into the one-on-ones, the individual drills, and the interviews.
Okay, I got a couple of questions about this Special Six group. Out of that six, who was the strongest that you had to work with in terms of physical strength?
Out of the six, I would say Philippe Gagnon and probably Pierre Lavertu was very strong also.
Okay, who was the fastest? Who had the best natural quickness out of the group?
I would say Charles and Karl Lavoie.
And who was the smartest?
Football-wise, because I think they're all pretty smart cookies, but Pierre was very, very smart football player. Understands the game. I think they all do, but Pierre was one of the guys that sticks out to me like the most football smart type of guy. And you know what? I think they're well prepared to get to the next level, and they understand the game pretty well also.
Tell me what kind of effect there was for your group, for your offensive line group, playing against a front seven like Montreal's for 3 games a year. I've talked to a lot of the Montreal guys, and they said playing against your group made them better players. Was it the same thing in turn for your guys?
Absolutely. Those games, the Montreal games are, you don't have to motivate these guys very, very much to play those games. They're always, a big game on our calendar, on our schedule. And absolutely, Montreal's front is very, first of all, they're very well coached. They're very well, they give you different kinds of situations that you have to deal with. And athletically, they're very, very good. So I believe that they make us better.
Now, you were part of the Laval team that took to the field in the CIS for the first time back in the mid-1990s, and part of the resurgence of the game of football in the province of Quebec. There are a lot of great big guys in football coming out of Quebec. Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who's down with the Kansas City Chiefs, David Foucault, who came out of Montreal and is also on an NFL roster. Do you think in sports in Quebec, with the resurgence of football, there's finally a place for the big guy to compete? Baseball isn't necessarily a big guy game. Hockey, not necessarily a big guy game, like in terms of what we're talking about with offensive and defensive linemen. Do you think that because of the surge in football, you've been lucky enough in the RSEQ to now capitalize on what's being produced through the minor system and the CEGEP system?
Absolutely. The resurgence of the football part, yes, to Laval, to the Montreal Alouettes, but also to the CEGEP teams and the high school teams who do a great job of promoting promoting football and getting these guys to like the sport. And you're right. When I grew up, I was a hockey player. I probably started playing football at the tail end of my schooling. So and you talk to these guys like as hard as that might sound, Charles Vaillancourt was a hockey player when he was young also. He played multiple sports, and I think that's why at some point these guys are good athletes and good football players, because they did play other things and they discovered football at a later age. But Pierre Lavertu played soccer. All these guys. Phil Gagnon played was a judo guy. Jason Lauzon-Seguin was a basketball guy. So all these guys played different sports and helped them, play football.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate you taking the time out, Karl. Say hi to Glenn for us, and best of luck as you head along in through spring camps and into this upcoming season. Coming up, the new boss of the Regina Rams. Stick around.
The CFL and our partners at Football Canada want to make sure we keep growing, promoting, and investing in a safe game. Hit! Football Canada now requires all amateur coaches to be safe contact trained by 2017. By creating a standard of safety for all in our football community, we're making an already great game even better. Make sure your youth coach is safe contact trained, because making a safe game means making a better game.
Welcome back, everybody. The Regina Rams went through a difficult process in the offseason, having to replace their head coach, and they have found one, the third head coach in the Rams' history in the CIS, and he is native son Stephen Bryce. Earlier, we caught up with him on Skype. Tell us about that long road that brought you all the way back to Regina.
Well, it's actually kind of a convoluted path that I took. I left Regina in the first place to go to Jamestown because I just felt that I had reached my physical peak and I just, as good as I could get. So I wanted to keep playing football. And I was offered a scholarship, partial scholarship at least, to go to Jamestown College and play there. And I really enjoyed it. And I kind of got hooked on education and earned my biology degree. I thought I'd try California for 1 year and met my wife down there and decided to stay on a little bit longer. And I was very happy in the role as an assistant coach, and then the team that I was on kind of went downhill a little bit. We reached an 0-10 season in 2004, and the coach resigned, and I just made a decision that I'm either going to be a head coach or I'll probably step away for a little while. And I just wanted to kind of roll the dice and see what I could do myself and try to turn a program around. So I took over as head coach, and 2 years later we were league champions, and then next year after that we were defending league champions. So some of my reasons for coming back to Regina or coming back to Canada was just our daughter was born in 2012, and I just really wanted to have my daughters grow up around my family.
What about the level of competition in Canada West? Have you had an opportunity to re-engage in that?
The competition here is really stiff. The Canada West competition is outstanding. You get some of the best football play in the country here, and I'm really looking forward to the challenge.
Recruiting-wise, though, you start with one hand tied behind your back. You're very late in the recruiting cycle. I know that there was some work done prior to your arrival, and you've got some good talent to tap into in your own backyard in Regina. But how tough is it taking over a program that really has missed at least half a recruiting cycle this year, and maybe part of a recruiting cycle from the previous year during the transition between Frank McChrystal and Mike Gibson?
That might be the biggest challenge of all, is getting caught up on recruiting, because at any level of university football here in the States, the biggest job as the head coach is to be an effective recruiter. You need to attract the top athletes to come here. So you're right, I'm behind the 8 ball a little bit as far as that goes, but I'm working morning, noon, and night to kind of fill those holes in recruiting and shaking trees, and not only finding out what's available in our backyard, but even kind of trying to shake the trees south of the border a little bit too, because we're going to look high and low and try to find a couple of impact players that can come in and hopefully fill some key roles for us and make a difference.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is the various channels that you're going to work for recruiting. We've seen it in a few other CIS centers where there are some connections back to the United States. And obviously, after being there for 15 years, coaching at a high-profile level on the high school side, you must have some relationships that you can work with to bring players up here. How can you make the Regina Rams attractive to a potential American recruit? I'm sure you can point to Mr. Hicks playing in the NFL as a start.
Well, that's actually the first thing I talked about with the assistant coaches here, is if we're going down there to go after either a D1 bounce back or a junior college player who hasn't found a home yet, because the NCAA requirements, academic requirements, have become quite stringent with their 16 core credits that you have to have, and now they've upped it to a 2.5 GPA within the 16 core credits. There's a lot of outstanding athletes that don't qualify for NCAA that will qualify here. So there are athletes out there trying to find a home. We just have to find the right ones. And then I think that Regina will speak for itself. And I was talking to Sheldon Gray about this earlier. Of all the kids that came in that we have on our recruit list, our commit list, every single one of them that visited here signed here. So when you visit Regina, you see the caliber of people here, the quality of the people that are here, and how quickly you get embraced by the culture that's here. And you see the outstanding facilities that are here at the university. It's not a tough sell. It is a beautiful place, beautiful campus with outstanding people.
The Saskatchewan Huskies up the road have a pretty good relationship with the Saskatoon Hilltops in terms of bringing players across from the Hilltops into the Huskies program in the last 2 to 3 years of their eligibility. Scott McCauley interviewed for your post, pulled himself out of that competition, but wanted to get the message across that the Regina Thunder and the Regina Rams really should be on the same page in terms of being cooperative with one another. What sort of recruiting road do you see moving forward between yourself and the junior team in that town, and even broader to the rest of junior football across Western Canada?
I've developed a pretty good relationship with Scott. I was an invite coach for his evaluation camps this spring, so I was attending and helped to evaluate his offensive line on his camp. So I got a chance to meet Scott, and I really like him. I think he's a good guy, and I think he's a great coach. And I hope to continue our relationship and move forward, because that junior and CIS relationship that you have in one city, it really is, or should be, a symbiosis. I mean, we need to have this mutually beneficial relationship where players that we're looking for the similar kinds of guys, and sometimes they need to work on their grades. Well, you know what? Go tune up and work with the Thunder. And then same thing when they get guys that are close to the end of their eligibility with the Thunder, have a place for them to end up when they're done too. I don't want to see all of these graduates coming out of the Thunder going to Concordia and other places when we have a great opportunity for these guys right here in Regina.
Yeah, in Regina with the Rams, I know there's been some high cycles there and some low cycles over the years, but I think you've got a pretty good base to start building on, and you've got a very invigorated football community there behind you. So best of luck moving forward. So follow us throughout the month on our various social media channels. We'll have all kinds of interviews with people from throughout the CIS for you to check in on. Next month, it is our CFL Draft Preview Edition. You won't want to miss out on that. For now, let's get out to the game.